All right, so we're going to do a quick SPY recap, and then we'll hop into GME. So SPY, this is pretty textbook. So I want to show you guys something, especially if you're using ANEMOI. This is going to be pretty helpful to you. So you can see if we take a look from when we broke down from the hourly trigger right here, we can see that we made a low at 392 after the breakdown, which happened at 400-ish, 404. Okay, so 404, we came down, we made a low, and the hourly print is negative 4.5. When we make this new low here, you can see that the hourly print is negative 6.4. So the velocity is continuing to decrease to the downside with each new low that the market is putting in. And so what this tells us immediately is that this push down, sellers are in control. Right now there's no question, because if buyers had any sort of say in this push down, then the velocity would have already diverged. So immediately from the fact that SPY makes a low of 397, then bounces, and the hourly print was negative 4.5, and then SPY makes a new low at 392.45, and the hourly velocity print is more negative, that's your first sign that the ship is going down. Okay, then we have a little bit of chop, right, a range, and then when we come down and make this new low at 382, you can see that once again, the hourly velocity print is more negative with a negative 0.83. So one low, two low, three low, the hourly velocity is still increasing to the downside. Now again, if buyers had any sort of say here, then we would see the velocity diverging. But because the velocity has not diverged on three new lows, it tells us there's still more downside. So another thing, knowing what we just spoke about, when you see this bounce up to the hourly trigger, this is an excellent short opportunity. We came really close to the hourly trigger. Knowing that there has not been any divergences on this push down, this should be an easy short. Okay, then we make another push down, reject the hourly trigger once again. Again, expected, because just from these three lows, we know that sellers are still very much in control. SPY pushes down even more here, and on this low, 374.23, we get a hourly velo print of 0.75. So the hourly prints reset here on the touch of the hourly trigger, and then when we come down here, the first extreme print is negative 7.5. When SPY makes a new low, we get a negative 1. So the new low is 365, and the print is negative 1. Okay, now this is here where it comes in textbook ANEMOI. Alright guys, this is textbook ANEMOI stuff. So now watch. We make a new low here at 363. This is your first new low, and immediately you see clear divergence. Alright, that's your first divergence. Negative 6.3, because price makes a new low, 365 to 363, but the hourly velocity does not make a new low. Let me just make this a little more clear by removing that. Alright. And then we move over here, we make a new low, 361. Again, hourly velocity does not agree. This is clear divergence, these two pushes down. So again, just to make it clear, here's where we get our most extreme print, 365.22, and the hourly velocity print is negative 1. We make a new low right here, and we make a new low right here, and velocity does not, and then we rip upwards. Okay, we didn't put any meaningful hourly velocity prints on the board here. You guys could see like these are meaningful prints, these are meaningful prints. This is pretty meaningless when it comes to SPY, 0.2. Now for GME, if we would have got a 0.1, that's meaningful. But for SPY, which is trading at 300s, it's a lot less meaningful. And so we come straight back down, and then again we could see here. Okay, so the price is 361.53, and the hourly print is negative 4.8. We make one new low here, okay, 360.81. First divergence, negative 4.2. So again, negative 4.8, negative 4.2, but price made a new low. And then over here, price makes another new low, negative 4.7. This is negative 4.8. So from the fact that we had a new low, 361.53 to 357, so this is a pretty significant new low, and velocity did not make a new low, that's what's telling us, okay, now buyers are absolutely in control, because if sellers were in control when price made this new low, this hourly velocity print would have been more extreme to the downside. Like look over here, price came down, hourly velocity print, new low, new lower hourly velocity print, new low, even stronger negative hourly velocity print. But here we did not see the same thing. Price came down, we printed an hourly velo print of negative 4.8, and when price made a $4 new low, hourly velo did not. So that's your first sign of bullishness. Right when price crosses the hourly trigger, that's when you want to go long. And if you would have at 363, you could have rode this thing to 367 close on October 5th, Wednesday. Now let's zoom out a bit. All right, let's take away the hourly trigger and let's look at the daily velocity. So you can see throughout this entire push down, daily velocity kept increasing to the downside. And so there was no divergences. On this low, daily velocity was -8, and then -1.2, and then -1.5, and then -1.7, 2.0, 2.15. However, this is what everyone should be paying attention to. The low at 362 came with a daily velocity print of -2.15. When we came down and made a new low at 357, the daily print was -2. So we have divergence, bullish divergence on the hourly that we just showed, and we have bullish divergence on the daily time frame. As soon as we have bullish divergence on the daily time frame, that tells us price wants to attack the daily trigger. And here we are making that attack of the daily trigger. Now, if SPY SPY should be able to make it to the daily trigger at 382 at a minimum. Let's look at the hourly velocity to the upside. Okay, so here we have, we do have some slight bearish divergence. So you can see price 377.97, the positive hourly print was 0.64, and then price made a new high, 378.57, with a lower velocity print. So you can see as price is nearing this daily trigger, things are starting to cool down a bit. This push up is very strong, but now it's going to get a little tough for SPY to continue pushing up. However, that doesn't mean that it can't attack the daily trigger. What we can expect is like some sort of chop in this range, and then whichever way price breaks, either up above the daily trigger or down below the hourly trigger, is going to signify the next trend. If we look at the weekly velocity, okay, so we do have some significantly bearish weekly velocity, but once we close the week, that will decrease significantly. So currently, if this week we would attack 403, we would reject really hard. And another thing is when you have really bad weekly velocity, you're going to expect the daily trigger to provide resistance. So if I was giving one SPY forecast right now, I would say that SPY should be able to attack the daily trigger, whether it's tomorrow while the daily trigger is still at 382, or whether it's Friday when the daily trigger drops a couple more cents or maybe even $1, but it should be able to at least attack the daily trigger. When we attack the daily trigger, if there's really strong hourly velocity, we might be able to break above. If not, we're going to reject. Just looking at the weekly velocity, I would expect a rejection because the weekly velocity is pretty negative. But if we can break above the daily trigger with really strong hourly velocity could counteract the negative weekly velocity. And so, in short, the way I would summarize this is that I do think SPY is going to attack the daily trigger, but I don't have a really strong opinion on if it's going to break above or not. If it does break above, then we can expect SPY to melt towards 400. If it rejects, we can expect at least a retest of the hourly trigger. So it would look something like up, then down a bit, then up a bit, then down a bit, while the hourly trigger comes up and up and up, let's say to 375. And then while the daily trigger is moving down, the hourly trigger will be moving up until it gets tighter and tighter and tighter. And at that point, in like 3 days from now, the weekly velocity will be much less negative, and maybe Monday we'd be able to break the daily trigger and start a run to 400. But I'm bullish in this market 100%. One last thing, let's check the monthly trigger and the monthly velocity. All right, so yeah, I mean, there's definitely going to be some hurdles for SPY, but as long as we have the weekly trigger above the monthly trigger, the world isn't ending. All right, so this can still result in an airplane, and the most powerful ANEMOI setup that exists is a airplane with a weekly trigger and the monthly trigger. So that would mean the weekly trigger comes down, touches the monthly trigger, and then moves back up. So, this isn't a very bearish setup right now. SPY has about, I'd say, at least 4 weeks to get back above 403. And if it can't by that, if it can't get back above 403 in a month, then things are going to look really bad for the next year. But you know, there's still plenty of time for SPY to repair this setup. So I'm bullish short term. All right, so ever since September 8th, there have been lots of buyers stepping up on this daily level. So, you know, you can see it's been a full month of buyers stepping in, and you can see the buyers stepping in by the fact that the daily velocity just keeps receding. So what you want to do is you can draw a trend line. So from right here, from this daily print to here, to here, to here, to here, you can see that if as long as we keep this trend going, and it looks like it's a pretty strong trend right now, that the daily velocity will flip positive. I don't have like a trend line drawing tool. I will soon. It's actually going to be an update, but you could just do it in your eyes. You could just draw from here up to here, up to here, up to here, up to here, and it just looks like daily velocity is about to flip positive. So let's look at the daily trigger. Currently sitting at 27.93. Daily velocity is not too negative, so if we would attack this daily trigger right here, we could break above. Let's look at the hourly level. Okay, so this was a really good example of catch the falling knife setup. So what a catch the falling knife setup is when you have good hourly velocity, which we did here, and you have a major SPY gap down and a major attack of the hourly trigger just straight down, you can buy this dip even if price breaks below the hourly trigger, because it will act as sort of a spring, like a trampoline. When you jump on it, it comes down and then lifts back up. Not like a tap and go. Like, it's not going to be like a wick and then rejection and then bounce right back, but it's going to pull into the hourly trigger and then resolve to the upside. And so if you see these hourly velocity prints, okay, so you got 0.14, 0.11, 0.10, that's pretty significant for GME, and then you see price just attack the hourly trigger out of nowhere, you can buy this no fear, because more than 9 out of 10 times it's going to resolve to the upside. So you could have been buying all the way down here to 25.55, knowing that you have positive hourly velocity on your side, knowing that the hourly trigger is going to bring price right back up, and that's what happened. So tomorrow, well, let's zoom in on the day trader chart just to see how this looks on the 1 and 5 minute level. Okay, so definitely 3 trigger cluster setup right here. All right, so any move back above 26.48. Yeah, any move back above 26.48 should start bringing back a very strong uptrend. Now, I just want to point out one thing here. I always say pay attention to divergences when price attacks the hourly trigger here. So let's say you were unsure if this was bullish or bearish, if price is going to come down and continue falling, or if price is going to resolve to the upside. Just look at the 1 minute velocity. You can see immediately, look at the strong buying that's happening at the hourly trigger. So you can see the most extreme negative print was here, negative 0.07, price is at 26.37. And as price keeps coming down, the 1 minute velocity keeps getting more bullish and bullish and bullish. So this is really big bullish divergence on the 1 minute level. So if you're ever watching price make contact with the hourly trigger, you always want to look at what's going on the really small time frames. Are buyers stepping in at the hourly trigger? Is there significance right here of the hourly trigger? And you can see clearly on the 1 minute level that there is. Look at all the buying going on. And again, if this was bearish, you would not see any divergences, as I showed with SPY. If this was bearish, every time price would make a new low, so would the velocity. And you can confirm with the 5 minute velocity. All right, so 5 minute, there was no divergences, but there was really strong divergences on the 1 minute. So that's all you need. Once price attacks the hourly trigger with coming off positive hourly velocity, and you see these divergences happening on the 1 minute, that's telling you that bulls are still fully in control here. There's buying going on, and they're going to be able to lift it back above. So for GME, price closed at 26.39, and then if we remove everything besides the triggers, you can see this is a really tight 3 trigger cluster setup. Last time it was this tight was right here, and that brought price from 25 to 27 in a $2 move. So this is actually an even more bullish setup, because we're starting with the 1 minute trigger and the 5 minute trigger already above the hourly. Over here we were below. So if price can resolve to the upside here above 26.48, I would expect 100% a push towards the daily trigger, which we said was 27.97. Again, this is a really intriguing setup because weekly trigger, weekly trigger, monthly trigger airplanes are the most powerful setup, literally in ANEMOI. I mean, you can see here, it's not exactly an airplane, but you can see how the weekly trigger like comes down. Still a huge gap, but as soon as this happened and then the weekly trigger started lifting up off the monthly, we got a really sharp move to the upside. But the closer the weekly trigger is to the monthly when it turns, so the weekly trigger here was 33.10 when it started moving up, so it was moving down, 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 and then it started turning up right here. And that led to this really big reaction. If the weekly trigger at 33.10 was instead of like 30.30 and then started lifting, price can run $100. Price can run to new all-time highs. That's how powerful these weekly trigger, daily, monthly trigger airplanes are. So again, GME has about another 3 weeks to get above 32, and once that happens, you know, we should get a really, really nice lift. So monthly velocity, not, I don't think that's too bad. What is it? No, negative 0.3 is barely anything on the monthly level. So it's not really significant. Weekly velocity. All right, so the weekly velocity has repaired since last week, and then Monday it'll be a whole lot better as well, as long as we could continue climbing up or at least not make any new lows this week. So, you know, it all depends on what happens. If we can break above this daily trigger at 27.93, we can easily have enough acceleration to break above both these levels. So eyes tomorrow are on 27.93, and if we could get above the 1 minute trigger at 26.48. If we can, then that's a bullish 3 trigger cluster setup. So, you know, I have no problem for myself taking a shot at weeklies on these kind of setups because 9 out of 10 times I'll win. So, you know, anything above, if this 3 trigger cluster setup resolves bullishly, you also have, I'll just point this out, you also have a airplane with the 1 minute trigger and the 5 minute trigger rising off the hourly trigger. So it's not only a 3 trigger cluster setup, it's also like a double airplane. So the 1 minute trigger and the 5 minute trigger come down to the hourly, and then rises up off it. That's a really bullish setup. So we'll have to see how this plays out. Obviously, if price breaks down now below 26.22, we're going to be bearish for a bit, but we'll see. You know, it's either above 26.49 or below 26.22. All right.